Yeah, buddy. Yeah, man. How you guys doing? It is the very, very, very first episode of my brand new podcast, The Parley with MJ. I am your host, MJ Ultra. We're gonna be talking a bunch of nonsense, man. I hope you're ready. So here we are, episode 1 of my brand new podcast venture, tentatively titled The Parley with MJ. Parley is like an old-timey term about, means conversation or discourse, which is kind of strange because I'm really just talking to myself, so it's kind of like a discourse or a dialogue with my own self. I got the idea to do this a few weeks ago. Since coronavirus time, I've been, trapped in the house, trying to find new and inventive ways to keep my creativity flowing, And of course, I love writing music. It's my passion. But when you're locked down all the time, you kind of, you try to find different ways to keep yourself entertained. So I've been watching tons of podcasts. I really dig what these guys are doing. It's something that I've always wanted to do. I have the means and the setup to do it, so I figured, what the hell? Here we go. I don't know what I'm doing. This could be a total train wreck, but I'm happy that you're along with me. Please feel free to, let me know how you think I can improve the show, things you'd like me to talk about, maybe guests you'd like me to have on. So, I appreciate you listening. Let's get into this. On this day in 1314 was one of the greatest battles to ever take place in human history, and that is the Battle of Bannockburn. And it's serendipitous because there was a little movie that came out in the 1990s called Braveheart, starring Melson Gibson, one of the most phenomenal actors and directors. He also directed that movie. And it was about a man named William Wallace. Now, I remember going to my grandma's house, shout out grandma, and she had HBO, which for me, growing up in Pittsburgh, we didn't have a lot of accoutrement. We didn't have a lot of we were on the WIC program. We had to eat Kix cereal and Cheerios. We didn't have that frou-frou Cocoa Puffs and things like that. So she had HBO, the home box office, and a little film came on one night real late called Braveheart. And I was so blown away by this movie. I swear to you, it was a game-changing, eye-opening flick. I'm like, that is what I want to do. I want to do movies like this. I want to be in these epic films. I love the accents. I love the storyline. So I became infatuated with 14th century Scotland, infatuated with it. I learned every line pretty much to the whole movie. I learned how to play the theme song on piano. I was obsessed with this flick. And so I was at my grandma's house and I recorded it. I took a blank VHS tape, which is totally illegal, and I recorded from HBO Braveheart. And I watched it nonstop for years. Learned every line, learned the music, and I would walk around school. Shout out to Bishop Leonard Regional School, no longer around, back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I would do impressions. I would recite lines from the movie. And one of the lines really at the end of the movie was in the year of our Lord, 1314, patriots of Scotland, starving and outnumbered, charged the fields of Bannockburn. They fought like warrior poets. They fought like Scotsmen and won their freedom forever. And then I would kind of throw my fist up and run around the school. I would take my shirt off and wear blue face paint and stuff. But man, I was obsessed with that movie. I learned all the dialogue, all the lines, and it was like kind of like pre-internet, right? Well, the internet was around, but we didn't have no Wikipedias and stuff where you could just find out all you wanted on the subject. So the uh, I went to the library and I got a bunch of books on the 14th century Scotland and the Battle of Bannockburn and the Scottish War of Independence. One of those books was called The Scottish Chiefs, and it talked about guys like William Wallace and Robert the Bruce, who was the commanding officer for the Scottish during the Battle of Bannockburn. And and I would just learn all about it, and come to find out that pretty much everything in that movie was untrue. For instance, when Melly Gibbsies gets down with the Queen of, England, the French girl, never happened. She was about 4 years old at the time of the battle, so that was a lie. You had a bunch of Scotsmen running around in kilts. They weren't even invented until the 1600s. That was a lie. That was a big lie, you know? Everyone had long hair and muscles and shit, but in reality, they were just a bunch of like short dudes with chainmail, and most of them were rich. Willie Wallace was actually a rich dude, but it didn't matter because I was still in love with it, love with the movie. Made me want to become an actor, do the whole thing. So I got to give a lot of credit to that movie for giving me the inspiration to do what it is I do now. And I think it's really serendipitous that it took place on this day in 1314, the Battle of Bannockburn. You make sure you check that out. And there's also a couple of good movies that they've made about Robert the Bruce. I think one of them is with Chris Pine, called maybe it's called The Last King or something like that. There's a few of them going around. So, if you're interested in it, I please check that stuff out. Robert the Bruce, the Battle of Bannockburn, Willie Wallace. So, yeah, we'll talk about some current events. Say, oh my God, come on now. It's been kind of a bummer week for the comedy community because of the stuff that's going on with Chris D'Elia. Chris D'Elia is one of my favorite comics. And honestly, I think I got really into him when the pandemic started. So I was watching a lot of his podcasts, that whole clique of people, Rogan, Brian Callen, Brendan Schaub, and Chris D'Elia and all those guys, Theo Vaughn, who I think is incredible. But I became such a fan of all of those guys, particularly him, and it feels, like it's an RIP right now, because from the looks of it, he had done some pretty bad things. They're saying that, he allegedly groomed these 16, 17-year-old girls, to send him photos and, just all this awful stuff. Now, I don't know if, if it's all true, if he really did anything illegal. I'm not sure, but I saw a podcast where they were saying that he was going to come out and essentially make a rebuttal on his podcast, to each allegation against him. So I guess, we'll hear more from him, but he's been released by his agents, CAA, and those guys. A lot of the streaming platforms are pulling his work, pulling episodes of shows he was in. I think Comedy Central pulled his comedy special down. So, it's kind of a bummer. I hope it all kind of works out. And, I think that the women that, decided to come forward are brave women for having done that. Hopefully Chris gets some help and, he can move on because he's a real talent, and I'm certainly going to miss watching him. Bubba Wallace, this thing is kind of crazy. So apparently Bubba Wallace he's like the only black NASCAR driver in that level at that circuit. So he had found, or one of his one of the people that work on his team had found a noose in his garage. So it was determined recently by the FBI that that noose had been there for a while, since October of 2019, before he got in there. The FBI are saying that it was used as a garage pull, as a means to kind of pull a garage door shut. I don't know. Um, I don't really think it matters. He was certainly it was certainly a crazy timing thing. He was, with all that was going on with the George Floyd thing, and all of the protests, and then more importantly, NASCAR just decided to do away and ban any use of the Confederate flag, of the rebel flag. So it came at a very crazy and shocking time. I thought it was really powerful when all of the guys, the other teams had kind of marched with him. They took his car down to the pit lane there, and they all kind of, marched together in solidarity. He got emotional and things. And I thought that was pretty cool to see, because I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I'm from, a part of the world where there are a lot of those. And typically, it's not hard to associate NASCAR with sort of like, I hate to say it, but just kind of like, the redneck type of, fan base and things like that. Of course, there's amazing people in NASCAR, but it wouldn't surprise me if, you wouldn't have to dig too deep to find little, pockets of racism among the NASCAR crowd. And I know that I say that because I remember in an interview with this cat who had done some covering of it back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and did a bit of an expose on like, racist culture and stuff down at the NASCAR, among the NASCAR fan bases and things. So, I don't really know what the implications are of them having that, noose, if they find out who put it there, if it was in fact, used as a garage pull or something. I don't know how this is going to pan out, but I do feel that watching everybody kind of, march in support of him, because he's the only black guy that's doing it. That in and of itself, has got to be pretty challenging as it is. So hopefully some goods come of that. I want to choose different sources for some of the news that I'm getting so that I can kind of have a look at it from every side of the aisle. Oh, I just almost knocked my phone over here. From the other side of the aisle. So I found this amazing Fox News article about Mike Huckabee, who is coming out against this activist, I assume is like a liberal dude named Sean King, who is calling for the removal of all murals, stained glass windows of white Jesus, his European mother, and their white friends. Because we're in the season of taking down these statues and calling for the removal of, images of like racist ass, slave trading ass, historical figures. So yeah, he wants to take these down. And Mike Huckabee's like, fuck that. You can't take white Jesus down because he was the ultimate person who loved the unlovable. Mike Huckabee was like the governor of Arkansas or something. So of course he'd say some shit like that. My problem with like, the white Jesus thing was like, getting rid of white Jesus. Like, we all know that Jesus was not white. Like, it's pretty much been proven time and time again that the historical Jesus was certainly not white. But I remember watching this Denzel Washington interview. I think it was with him and a few other people. They were on this. They were promoting a movie, and one of the dudes was saying, "Do you guys remember?" Mostly a black cast. Do you guys remember that in your home growing up, you'd have a picture of Jesus, and then you'd have a picture of Martin Luther King Jr., right next to him in pretty much every African American household, and they all kind of agreed that that it was funny that the Jesus that they had, the photo of Jesus, the picture of Jesus was indeed a white Jesus, and the guy that played Bubba in Forrest Gump was on this, was in the cast of this movie, and he had said his brother had brought home a portrait of Black Jesus one time, and and wanted to replace the white Jesus with the Black Jesus, and apparently his mother wasn't having that. So I think we all have a place in our heart for white Jesus. You know what I mean? He's kind of like the Santa Claus, of religion, Buddy Christ, happy white Jesus, and he looks like the dude from Jesus Christ Superstar, from the film version. I mean, that's a badass Jesus, So I fuck with white Jesus. I mean, Black Jesus has got way more swag, and I'm sure that, he's super cool and stuff. But we can't be getting rid of white Jesus like that. We can't just sweep him under the rug. Before you know it, we're going to telling our kids Santa Claus ain't real, Easter Bunny ain't real, and stuff like that. So yeah, to infinity and beyond. There could be as many as 36 communicating intelligent civilizations in our galaxy. Duh, course. I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of a high number, but when you put it into perspective, it's a bummer, because let's say you got like 100 billion stars in the galaxy, hundreds of billions of stars in the galaxy. The odds of us running into, one of these 36 out of 100 billion are depressingly low. It's just kind of a drag to me, because one of my things on my bucket list was to just hang out with an alien. When I was in the 6th grade, we used to have this Scholastic book fair, where you could go and buy books at school. And one of the books I bought, and you could also buy you could buy all kind of shit, but we used to get 2 books. We'd get the video gaming book magazine thing, where it had cheat codes for the Game Genie. Shout out Game Genie. And spooky books. And I bought this spooky book one year that had urban legends in it. And in that book, one of the stories was about Area 51. So in the same way with the Braveheart thing, I became obsessed, absolutely obsessed with Area 51, all the history, Bob Lazar, that whole thing. On Joe Rogan's podcast, he had a guy named Brian Cox that goes around and does these really great shows, live light shows, essentially about the universe and things like that. And he went so far as to say, on average, amongst all the galaxies in the universe, which are countless and in the billions, there's on average, based on what's something used called the Drake equation, which determines how many habitable planets are in each star system, the amount of time, so on and so forth. He estimated that there's about 2 intelligent extraterrestrial life forms in each galaxy, which is just as equally as depressing. So, I mean, it's safe to say that, old MJ here probably won't get to experience any extraterrestrial encounters in his lifetime, but here's hoping. And I think when I die, I'm going to get frozen and wake me up. You have permission to come and wake my ass up so that I can communicate with the aliens if you guys ever find them, all those kids out there, okay? And I appreciate that. Don't forget me. So yeah, I want to talk about the movie that I watched a few days ago. I take my girl to the show. So yeah, movie review time. I want to talk about a movie I just saw last week, the new Spike Lee movie. I have a weird relationship with Spike Lee's movies because I feel like they're just hard to watch. They're hard to sort of watch again because they make you think a lot, and I feel like you have to put a lot of effort forth to enjoy them. Usually, because there's some heavy stuff in there, and they're not always the most enjoyable to watch. They're great films, but for me, I like to sometimes just unplug and be entertained. However, although this movie had its elements of some heavy stuff, it was really enjoyable to watch. It was a lot of fun. It's a bit of a shoot 'em up. Actually, it's probably one of the most violent films that I think that he's ever done. I did see The Black Klansman last year, which I thought was phenomenal, and that dude, his name Chadwick Boseman, was in it. He was unreal. So I really dug that. And this is kind of like even more so on that line. It's a bit of a buddy. It has a lot of comedic elements to it, tons of action, and then of course the heavy stuff. Talking about race relations, the effects of the Vietnam War on the Vietnam people, of course on the GIs. You talk a lot about the black GIs. So essentially, you got this 4 guys that were black GIs during the Vietnam War, and they had their own crew called the Bloods, and they were some badass. I think they might have been like, I want to say maybe Rangers, Army Rangers, and they were just some ass kicking brothers, that came together and whooped some butt, and then they came across some gold. So that's kind of the story. They go back to Vietnam in present day. Now they're much older, obviously, and they're going back to find this gold that they buried there, and also recover the remains of another one of the Bloods, who's played by Chadwick Boseman, who dies in combat. So they got this mission. But it's great because you get these 4 actors that are older dudes and relatively unknown, character actor guys. Let's see, you got Delroy Lindo, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., and he's one of these dudes that you see him in every movie. He does this great. He's just got a great comedic time, and I saw him in that movie with Ed Helm where he goes to a real estate convention or something, and hilarity ensues. But yeah, I've seen him in a few things over the years. He's just wonderful. The music, though, was like phenomenal. Of course, you have like the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s era soul, funk soundtrack, but they feature some great stuff by Marvin Gaye, like different renditions of Mercy Me. They have whole scenes where they just play the a cappella, and man, it's just some powerful stuff. You hear a lot of Marvin Gaye in this, and he's just gives you chills. So incredible music. Great job by Spike Lee, man. Definitely something I recommend you check out. It's called The 5 Bloods, and it's on Netflix. And keeping it with the 70s, my throwback track of the week comes from the early 70s by a song by the name of Grandma's Hands, written and recorded by the brilliant and late great Bill Withers. Put this out a couple of weeks ago, and like I said, I want to sort out the copyright stuff with these covers that I'm going to be putting on the podcast, but hope you enjoy. Here it is, Grandma's Hands by Bill Withers.
Grandma's hands clapped in church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands played the tambourine so well. Oh, Grandma's hands used to issue out a warning. She'd say, Billy, don't you run so fast. Might be falling on a piece of glass. Might be snakes there in that grass. Grandma's hand. Grandma's hands soothe the local unwed mother. Grandma's hands used to ache sometimes and swell. Oh, grandma's hands used to lift her face and tell her, she said, baby, grandma understands that you really love that man. Put yourself in Jesus' hand, grandma's hands. Grandma's hands used to hand me a piece of candy. Grandma's hands picked me up each time I fell. Oh, grandma's hands, boy, they really came in handy. She said, Matty, don't you whip that boy. What you wanna spank him for? He ain't dropped no apple core, but I don't have grandma anymore. If I get to heaven, I'll look for grandma's hand.
Yeah, boy. Hope you enjoyed my little cover of Grandma's Hands. So just a little tidbit of information there. The beginning of that song and the end of it, where it's like, that little part of the song was sampled for one of the biggest hits of the '90s. Of course, you guys all know Blackstreet's "No Diggity." I like the way you work it. That one. So in the beginning of that, or throughout the song, they actually sample. I think Dr. Dre made that beat. They actually sampled that. So just a little tidbit of information for you there. Shout out to the late great Bill Withers for writing one of the prettiest songs of all time. Let me get into the segment called "Why You Gotta Be So Mean." Where I'm going to take a stupid meme that I find on the internet and talk about it. I saw this one on my friend's Instagram page. Shout out to The Real Deal, the incredible battle rapper from the Steel City. He's also a childhood friend of mine. We grew up together just blocks away. Yeah, I saw this on his page, and we'll have a look here. It says, you have just acquired a non-human 80s sidekick. Which one are you choosing? So we got Gizmo from the Gremlins, Falcor from the Never-Ending Story, Ludo from the Labyrinth, E.T. from E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Howard from Howard the Duck, and Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. Great sidekick. It's like, what am I doing, though? Why do I have a sidekick? Like, what is my job? I guess if I'm just me, if I'm just MJ singing and, doing entertainment and shit, I don't know. I'd probably go with Howard. I'd go with Howard the Duck because he's funny. He's got a lot of quips. He's a clever guy, clever duck. So I think I'd probably go with Howard. I have someone to talk to, someone to bounce sort of ideas off of and stuff. I think that'd be kind of cool. But if I had like if I was like a superhero or something, if I was like a superhero or something like that, I probably have to go with Harry, because he's like tall and strong and agile. I could be wrong about this, but I think. I could look it up because I have a computer in front of me. But I think Harry, the guy who was in the suit of Harry and the Hendersons, was Kevin Peter Hall from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Shout out. And he was a super tall actor from the '80s that also played the Predator. And I think he was in like Weird Science, one of those movies. But I think that he is the person in the Harry suit from Harry and the Hendersons, Kevin Peter Hall. And I think he had died early on. He had a blood transfusion and got AIDS. And he died in the early 90s. But yeah, Kevin Peter Hall, I think, was Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, the man in the suit. If you're familiar with Predator, I think he has a cameo towards the end of the film. He's the helicopter pilot that comes and picks up Arnold from the jungle after he defeats Predator. Yeah, so Harry would be my sidekick if we were like into some, if we had to kick ass and stuff. But I mean, shit, none of these other guys fucking speak English, really. So I'd have to go with Howard. He'd be my number one. And then I think third, I don't even know. I don't think I've ever seen The Labyrinth. I don't know who Ludo is. Gizmo's cute. Falcor, I mean, he's cute too, but he's giant, So much for trying to be like indiscreet. Or being discreet, rather. Yeah. So I think third, I'd probably go with E.T., because he's an alien. He's got access to a spaceship. He can get us around the universe if we got to, kick ass in a distant galaxy. That would be my third choice. I don't know. What do you guys think? Leave your choices in the comments down below here. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got. What are we at? About 40 minutes? Yeah. My very first podcast. Episode 1. Yeah. Did it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to see me talk about. Maybe I'll find new and inventive ways to keep it interesting for you guys. It felt good to do this. I had a lot of nerves, but now I feel a lot better. Yeah, so I'm going to try to do this once a week. Appreciate the support. Make sure to share it and tell your friends if you dig it. And I'll leave you with one of my original tracks on the way out. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Lay back with the boom clap rhythm, slow whining in the moonlight fitting. Yeah, won't you stay, baby, stay? Little mama, come and let your hair down. Locked down, feeling like a life sentence, but I got it, so I stay my apprentice. And now's the time, so little mama, let your hair down. Cause when our hearts collide, gonna shake the foundations. You